Hi, welcome back, Hononegah, Algebra 1. Today we're going to talk about 7-6 day 2. And day 2 for most teachers is bringing up the second option on how to do factoring. And so today is going to be a lot of factor by grouping talk, but I already showed both in the previous video, so I am going to continue to show both again today and maybe lean a little bit heavier on the factor by grouping instead of the factor by guess and check. So I'm going to do the first one by guess and check. So I want two things that'll multiply to be 4. So I'm going to guess 4x and 1x. So that is a possibility. Obviously 4 times 1 or 2 times 2 would be a good guess. Factors of 3, it's pretty simple. There really is only one way to factor to be 3, and that's 3 and 1. And you're going to check the inner, so multiply those two together. Check the outer, multiply those two together. And if it adds up to the middle, you did it correctly. And so the next one I'm going to do by factor by grouping, just so I can go back to back here and do two different methods. So that is guess and check. Guess the first term, guess the last term, and check the inner and outer. So if I multiply the outside two numbers together and come up with two ways, and this goes back to give me a way that multiplies to be negative 14 that adds to be negative 5. So negative 7 times positive 2. Rewrite the question. So I got a positive 2x, a negative 7x, and I'll just keep it consistent, sorry, a negative 7x, a positive 2x, and a minus 7. So notice what I did was I rewrote the question, and instead of the middle term, I rewrote those as the numbers that I got. And now I do grouping. So if I take an x out of the first two, a 1 out of the second two, because there isn't a greatest common factor, and then I group the GCF and keep what's the same. So again, this is the second method or the other method. If you are somebody who struggles with guess and check, then that's obviously the next best method. So here we go. I'm going to do guess and check this time. Two things that multiply to be 3x. So there really is only one way, 3x times 1x. And then multiplying to get positive 2. So my board is having an issue here, so I apologize, but there we go. So 3x, and so a minus 2 and a minus 1. Check, so negative 1x, negative 6x, and it works. And then how do I solve something in factored form? We've done this before. So once it is in factored form, set the factors equal to 0 and solve. Factoring out a GCF, so it's still going back to the lesson that we did previously. When factoring out a GCF, take out the highest number that is divisible and or letter that is divisible into all of them. And so the next one, I can take a 2 out of each one. What happens if our lead coefficient is negative? Anytime you have a negative with your x squared, you always should take that out as a GCF. So, and change all the signs. So never actually try to factor something that has a negative x squared value. That negative will be that way all the way to the end. So in the very end, we will continue to have a negative 1 outside. So now let's do factoring. And I'm going to do guess and check. So I need two things that'll multiply to be 4. And we've kind of guessed 4 already, but I'm going to this time do 2x and 2x. So again, and I know I'm more experienced at this, but ultimately I'm looking for two numbers to be 4x. Now, positive 8. So I want a positive, or excuse me, negative 5. So I want a negative 1 and a positive 5. And I'm going to check my inner and outer. So negative 1 times 2x, positive 10x, and it adds up to the middle. So my answer, again, don't forget about the fact that you took a negative 1 out to begin with. So the next one, I'm going to take a negative 1 out, change all the signs, and then factor what's left. So this time I'm going to do grouping, just because I feel like you need more options. Like you need, if you're not good at the guess and check, and to be honest, the guess and check is a little bit higher level. Like you have to be really good at your guesses and your checks. Multiply the outside two numbers together. I think many people will do a much better job if you multiply the outside two numbers together and come up with two numbers that multiply to be 18 that add up to -9. Excuse me, add up to -11. So two numbers that multiply to be 18 and add up to the middle number. Then rewrite the question and do grouping. So I take 3t as a GCF for the first two, -2 as a GCF for the second two. Take the GCFs, group them together, and don't forget the -1 that you did all the way in the beginning. So the next slide is really just starting to talk about using grouping. And so here again, I'm just going to do grouping on this page. I'm going to multiply the outside two numbers together. I get 6. Factors of 6, that gets you 5, would be +2 and +3. So now rewrite the question. 2x squared plus 2x plus 3x plus 3. Notice that I rewrote the question as having 4 terms instead of rewriting the question that has 3 terms. I took the GCF out of the first two, the GCF out of the second two, group the GCF, and keep what's the same. And that is the correct factoring for that trinomial. So I'm going to read through this. Magic numbers, the multiply AC that adds up to B. Once you find the magic numbers in step 1, rewrite the middle term using the magic numbers, factor by grouping. You can always check by FOIL. Next one, again, I'm going to do grouping because it's kind of the theme of the day. So -48. So I need two things that multiply to be -48, but add up to -13. So again, knowing your times tables, understanding. So a -16 times a +3 would multiply to be -48. So rewriting the question, 6x squared, a -16x, a +3x, and a -8. So what can I take out of the first two? Well, I can take a 2 out of the 2x, sorry, out of the first two terms. So taking out the GCF, and then there isn't a GCF for the next one, so taking out just a 1. The parentheses are the same, so group and keep was the same. So next one. Factor. And I'm going to do this one in 2 ways. So again, I think it's important to at least have options. And if once you're good at one of them, whether it's factor by grouping or whether it's guess and check, stick with it. Get better at it and just keep practicing it. So let's do, I'm going to multiply the outside two numbers together, and I want factors of -12. That's going to get me 4. So again, I know my times tables pretty well, but a +6 and a -2 would multiply to be -12 and add up to be 4. So rewrite the question now. 4x squared, a +6x, a -2x, and a -3. Take out the GCF of the first two. Take out the GCF of the next two. And again, if anytime you have a negative sign, you have to take the negative out as your GCF. Group what's the same. Excuse me, group the GCF and keep what's the same. Now, I'm going to do this exact same question. So I'm going to erase this. I'm going to erase everything except I'm just going to keep that. So that's the answer. I'm going to do this now with guess and check. So let's go back. I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to do it with guess and check. So I want to guess two things that will multiply to be 4. So two things that will multiply to be 4x would be, 4x squared, sorry, is 2x and 2x. That is an option. And now, +3 times -1, that is an option. And so if I check the inner and I check the outer, it adds it adds up to the middle. So again, that both options are viable, both options work, and you just need to get better at one of them. Anytime you're going to solve by factoring, it needs to equal 0. Then you have to be able to factor it. And so whether you're using guess and check, whether you're using factor by grouping, you have to be able to factor this. So I'm going to do guess and check this time. So 3x times x makes 3x squared. Factors of 8. So I'm going to go -4 times -2. Check. -2x, -12x does add up to the middle. Now for the actual solve. This goes back to a previous section. Anytime you have something in factored form, set the factors equal to 0 and solve. So set the factors equal to 0 and solve. Now you try. And again, always do guess and check first, or always do GCF first. So anytime you're stuck or looking at a problem, before you get started, I know you're going to see the 8 and just get going, they're all divisible by a number. Like they're all divisible by 8. So that is always the first thing you should always try to do, is take the GCF out. Then act as if the 8 is not there. There's no number in front now. So factors of 6 that add up to -7 is -6 and -1. So it automatically factors, you just have a GCF out in front. Again, another you try, so you can hit pause if you want, but this one you can take out a -1. So that -1, just like the 8 here, stays in your answer. So -1. I need factors of 3, and then factors of 2. So I'm going to go with a -2 and a +1. Check the inner, check the outer, and it works. And so 3x minus 2, x plus 1, with the -1 that I took out in the beginning. So now we have 2 that you can do on your own. Take a few seconds, hit the pause button, see if you can try to get these on your own. All right, welcome back. I'm going to do this in 2 different ways, just to, again, emphasize the 2 methods that we have learned. So factors of 2. So 2b times 1b. So that one's a pretty easy one because it is a prime number. And so now I have to get 5, or look in the middle. You always want to look in the middle when you're doing guess and check to see if there's a, so I can need a -5 and a -1, because again, I'm trying to get a negative. Check, check, it adds up to the middle. That is correct. Now I'm going to do the same exact problem in another way. So I'm going to multiply the outside 2 numbers together, +10. Factors of 10 that would get you -7. Well, -2 times -5. Rewrite the question and do grouping. So I could take a 2b out of the first 2, a -5 as a GCF out of the second 2, group the GCFs, and keep what's the same. So you'll notice, again, same answer. So 2 different methods, 2 different ways of getting the exact same answer. Next one, either way, you're still going to have to start by taking the -1 out. So that doesn't matter which method you use, and I just messed up. So when you take that negative out, you're not only taking the negative out of the 5, and for some reason my board, there we go, taking the negative out of the 5, but you're also changing all the signs as well. So -6m, +1. All right, now it's a matter of pick your method. So if I decided I'm going to do guess and check, then I need 2 things that'll multiply to be 5m squared, and then 2 things that'll multiply to be +1. Check it, -1m, -5m, adds up to the middle. I do want to do this in both methods. So let me scroll down here. So the answer, there. Next one, I'm going to do the exact same. I still have to take out the -1. So 5m squared minus 6m plus 1. Multiply the outside two numbers together. Factors of 5 that would get you -6. So -5 and -1. Rewrite the question. Take out the GCF of the first two. The GCF of the second two. Group the GCF, keep what's the same, and don't forget the -1 that you took out all the way back in the beginning. Solving. So the first one here, first it has to equal 0, so I did that. Next, factor. I'm just going to do it by guess and check this time. So two things that'll multiply to be 3x squared, and two things that'll multiply to be +2. Check the inner, so I multiply the inner and I multiply the outer. If it adds up to the middle, it's correct. When I go to solve this, set the factors, because once it's in factored form, now I can solve. Set the factors equal to 0 and solve. So set the factors equal to 0 and solve. Now, you never want a negative a term or a lead coefficient to be negative. So anytime you're going to solve, I always move the problem around or switch things to the other side of the equal sign. So I'm going to add 12n squared. So now that it's on the other side, I'm going to add 11n. So now it's on the other side. So 0 equals a positive 12n squared, a positive 11n, and a -15. So again, anytime I'm trying to solve something, I always move the equation around so that it's, again, a positive a term. I'm going to do guess and check, and this one can be a little challenging because there's different ways of getting 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you might be able to get 12. I'm going to try 3 and 4. So I'm going to go right in the middle. Now, again, lots of different ways to get -15. Positive, and one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So let's say I did a +5 times a -3. Let's see if that works. And again, you kind of get better at the guess and check. You kind of get better at, well, if I do my inner, it's going to be 20. If I do my outer, it's going to be -9. And so when I add that up, it is going to equal +11. So again, you're going to get better at that the more you practice it. With that being said, I want to solve it. So once it is in factored form, set the parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So n is equal to -5/3 and n is equal to +3/4. Kind of ran out of space there. So real world question. The length of a rectangular reserve is 1 mile longer than twice the width. So here's the width. It's 1 mile longer than twice that. The area of the reserve is 55 square. So if I have W times 2W plus 1, it equals 55. Distribute 2W squared plus W would equal 55. How do I solve? I have to make it equal 0, and then I have to factor it. So I need two things that'll multiply to be 2W squared, and then I need two things that'll multiply to be 55. So a +11 times a -5. Always check. So this multiplies to be +11W. This multiplies to be -10W. And so when I go to solve this, set the factors equal to 0. And so W equals 5. And W equals -11/5. Well, you can't have a side that's negative, so that's not possible. So I have a width of 5 miles and then a length of 11 miles. Your homework assignment was all the way back on the front. Oh, I'm sorry. not, oh, all the way back on the very front, if I remember right. So your homework assignment is on page 395, 3 through 21 odd. This is by far one of the most challenging sections that we deal with because guess and check can be complicated, or factoring by grouping can be complicated. So please make sure that you practice this. If you have any questions, talk to your teacher, and good luck.